Hello, hello. I am sharing with you one of the fun techniques that I make for using backgrounds, and it's this right here. It's the plaid, and then I got these really cute stamps from Tailored Expressions with dogs on it, and dogs and plaid just like go together for some reason for me. So it was really easy. So what I did was I made a plaid background out of a card panel cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch, and then I cut them. I painted it and then cut it in half, and then used each like 1/3 and then 2/3 for a card panel. And so that's what I did with the card. But I'm going to show you how I paint this, and then I'll kind of show you how I constructed the card. But it's pretty simple, and it's really turned out cute. I'm really excited for it. So I'll keep this kind of so you can see the plaid, but I might have to move it a little bit too. So I'm using two flat brushes. They're not anything expensive by any means. They're actually very cheap. I do not like to go by size numbers because each brand has its own size. So even though this is a size 16, which I would never say this is a size 16, that it's more like a 2/3 inch brush, and then maybe 1/2 inch brush, so flat brush. And I like using flat brushes for plaid because it gets that nice square look to it, and you can kind of use it two different ways. So I'm going to start with Yellow Ochre or Raw Sienna. Either one will work. They're about the same color depending on the brand, and Yellow Ochre is a little bit more opaque. So with plaid, it's I feel like it's a very mindfulness activity. You have to play around a little bit because sometimes you don't get enough paint on your brush the first couple strokes, but then you'll get used to how much paint you need. And I'm using the bigger one. You also will be able to play with your pressure. How thick do you want your brush stroke to be? And I go back and forth one and two, but I'm leaving white. And I'll move my palette around a little bit so you can see a little bit more there. Um, and then maybe one more right here. It's okay if your spaces don't quite match because you're going to be adding more color to it. It's really just, for me, this is like a mindful meditation that I can paint and then use for a background later. And so that's really kind of the basis behind this. Is it started out as a watercolor meditation, and Lisa Solomon in her book Field Guide to Color has a meditation kind of like this, but I think I've taken it to a completely different level. So I am inspired by Lisa Solomon's watercolor meditations. I don't remember how she does like drips. So she would have like yellow drips going down one way and another, kind of like a plaid. But I did not enjoy the drips. I like to use my paintbrush. So something kind of like that. It does not have to. You do not have to think about the space issue as much. Um, Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my burnt sienna, which is really really pretty. I love. Or you could use raw sienna, as long as it has like an orangey look to it. You just want an orangey look to it. And what I did was I just overlapped it. I overlapped the yellow ochre, and I didn't quite let it dry as much as I should have. So it's gonna probably bleed into the yellow ochre, but that's quite all right. And I'm gonna let it kind of do its thing. This probably needs a little earlier. Oops. Feel free to fast forward this. But you can kind of see how it's coming along, and then I'll rotate my paper, and I see like where they're overlapping, so I don't necessarily want to go back over the yellow ochre. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start a small line right there. Good design. equals knowing your space. It's coming together quite lovely, I think. Do one more right here. I like that. Okay, I'm going to let that dry just a tiny bit. There's a lot of water on it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my indigo, and I'm going to use, I like, again, a light value, a darker value, and then a really dark value. So, and I forgot that I don't actually have indigo on this palette. So I'm going to use a mix of some ultramarine, which you could just do ultramarine, but since we have, you could just do indigo. That's purple. That's not my ultramarine. Here's my ultramarine. That's not my ultramarine either. This is my ultramarine. It's almost out because I've used it so much. But there's my ultramarine. I'm going to need a bit more. And then I'm going to take my Raw Sienna, and I'm just going to darken it up a little bit. And that's still a little orangey. You get the right mix there. That's a pretty good indigo. Indigo has probably some purple too. We can mix in some of that purple. What the heck? All right, now it's just where do I want my lines, and I think I want it. I'm not using the I'm using the thinner side of the brush, so I'm going like that instead of like that. I'm using the thin side, the edge of the brush instead of the full bristle. Hopefully that makes sense. And this way, I can actually make a lot of lines. Don't know if I will, but we'll see. I do try to keep in a straight line. If it doesn't happen, you're probably not going to notice, partly because it's going to be cut into half. But I also splattered and made it look more like it's a watercolor. See, like that. I probably should have. If you could definitely use a ruler or a piece of paper to use a guide. I also like the look of it looking very loose and whimsical, I guess. And I'm going to need some more. One more. All right, that was fun. That was really fun to make. All right, and now because it's, watercolor, and I want it to look like watercolor, I'm just going to splatter some clean water on. I'm going to move my cards so they don't get splattered on. And it's just, there's no wrong way to splatter. All right, so now it's kind of, like I said, I like it to look a little distressed. I'm going to take I curated this palette. This has a whole bunch of Daniel Smith iridescent colors. And so I'll use this gold. I like to use the gold, and the Autumn Mystery is what the red is. And I'll just splatter that onto here because everyone needs some pretty splatter, gold splatter. And I think that just adds to the depth of it. And when it dries, it really looks pretty. I'll show you on that one. It just gives it a nice subtle look. Sometimes you have to really splatter. Okay, now I see some water splots that I don't really care for. I'm gonna blot that up with my paper towel. But there we go. Now I'd let that dry and I'll paint a couple of these at a time. And then when I'm ready, I will cut this not completely in half, but maybe like you can see that this was like one third, or I don't know, 3/5 maybe, 2/5 and 3/5. That's probably more like it. And then I had my stamps and I would die cut them. I would stamp them and die cut them. And I actually watercolored. If you have good cardstock, you can take a dry brush and watercolor them. And so that's what I did for this one. Is I just watercolored it a little bit and then put them used pop dots, popped them up, and I think I got a way cute card for the fall. So anyways, I would love to see. I'd love to know if you make your own watercolor backgrounds, and if you do, what is some of your fun techniques, because we can all learn from each other. And I almost like this dark gray a little bit better. It reminds me of fall and pumpkin. So you could totally do something like this with pumpkins, or, like cut it in half. I think that it's way too much for one card panel, but you can cut it in half and do something really fun with it. So anyways, I hope this helps, and I hope you give this a try. And if you are new to watercolor, I definitely recommend trying this technique out. That helps with learning glazing. It helps with your brush handling and color theory. So 3 good reasons why to try this out, other than the fact that you get a really cool result. So anyways, happy painting. And if you're curious about this stamp set, it's called Guss and Gertie. And it's like the birthday one or the friendship one. They have 3. They have like a birthday one, a friendship one, and then like a Christmas one. But they're from Tailored Expressions, and I just love them. So anyways, happy creating, and we'll talk to you soon.